The war beast was supposed to be dead. Everyone on the battlefield believed it. The soldiers believed it. The scavengers believed it. Even the frightened Omega girl hiding inside its rotting corpse believed it. For 3 days she lived among death. 3 days surrounded by bones larger than castle pillars. 3 days listening to storms hammer against blood-soaked flesh. 3 days praying the hunters would never find her. Then, on the 3rd night, something beneath the beast breathed. Slow, heavy, human. A sound that should not have existed. A sound that transformed the grave into something far more terrifying. Because hidden beneath the carcass of the king's legendary war beast, a monster was still alive. And, before the moon rose again, that monster would open golden alpha eyes and look directly into hers. Not knowing that one terrified Omega girl was about to become the greatest weakness of the most feared king in the world. The battlefield smelled like wet iron and death. Ash drifted through the night sky like black snow. Broken spears protruded from the earth. Bodies lay scattered across the valley beneath torn banners that snapped violently in the freezing wind. Somewhere far away, wolves howled. Not the cries of hunters. The cries of mourners. Lyra ran. Every breath tore through her chest. Every step threatened to collapse her exhausted body. Behind her, distant lanterns flickered through the darkness. The search parties. Still hunting. Still looking for escaped prisoners. Still searching for survivors who were never meant to survive. Fear wrapped around her throat like a tightening rope. She had been running for days. Running since the destruction of her home. Running since the night she watched blood spill across the floors where her family once laughed. Running because staying alive was the only thing she had left. Lightning flashed above the battlefield. For a brief moment the valley became silver. And that was when she saw it. The war beast. Even in death, it looked enormous. A mountain of black fur and armored flesh sprawled across the earth. Its ribs towered upward like the remains of an ancient cathedral. Its jaws were large enough to swallow a horse whole. Legends spoke about creatures like this. Royal war beasts. Living weapons bonded to kings. Monsters feared by entire nations. This one had clearly died fighting. Massive wounds covered its body. Arrows jutted from its hide. Its blood had stained the ground black. But inside those towering ribs, there was shelter. Lyra hesitated. The smell alone nearly made her collapse.
Rot, blood, decay, death.
Yet the approaching lanterns behind her removed every other option. Survival won. As it always did. With trembling hands, she climbed into the beast's corpse. Darkness swallowed her immediately. The sound of the wind faded. The smell became overwhelming. She nearly vomited. But eventually she forced herself deeper into the hollow cavity formed by shattered bones.
And there she stayed.
1 day. Then 2. Then 3. Rainwater collected inside cracks of bone. That became her drink. Sleep arrived only in fragments. Every strange sound woke her. Every movement outside sent panic racing through her veins. The battlefield became a prison made from death. Then the breathing started. At first she ignored it. The mind played cruel tricks during starvation, especially inside a corpse. But the sound continued.
Slow.
Heavy. Deliberate. Breathing. Lyra froze. The noise came from somewhere beneath her. Impossible. The beast was dead. She knew it was dead, yet the sound remained. Breathing. Again. 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 Her pulse thundered. Every instinct screamed for her to run. But curiosity slowly overpowered terror. Carefully, she moved deeper into the darkness. Moonlight slipped through cracks in bone overhead. Just enough illumination. Just enough. And then she saw him.
A man.
Buried beneath collapsed flesh and shattered armor. His body was covered in blood. Deep wounds crossed his chest. One arm appeared broken. Dark hair clung to his forehead. His face was partially hidden by shadow. Yet, even unconscious, he radiated danger. The kind of danger that made the air feel heavier. Lyra stared. How had he survived? How long had he been trapped here? Questions flooded her mind. But another feeling surfaced.
Pity.
A dangerous emotion. one that had nearly gotten her killed before. Still, he looked close to death. And despite everything she had suffered, she could not leave him. Not like this. Not alone. Not buried inside a tomb. Carefully, she gathered rainwater, cleaned wounds, tore strips from her clothing, wrapped injuries. The work lasted hours, perhaps longer.
Time no longer mattered inside the beast.
Eventually, exhaustion claimed her. She leaned against bone and drifted into sleep. A nightmare woke her. Screams.
Blood.
Her mother's final cry. She jolted upright, breathing hard.
Disoriented.
And then she felt it.
Eyes.
Watching her. The man was awake. Golden eyes glowed within the darkness. Predatory. Ancient. Terrifying. The gaze locked onto her immediately. Not confused. Not weak. Dangerous. Like a wounded king trapped inside chains. Neither moved. Neither spoke. The silence stretched. The atmosphere tightened. Something primal stirred beneath her skin. An instinctive awareness. Omega and Alpha. Prey and predator. A balance older than kingdoms themselves. The stranger studied her. Then slowly his gaze drifted toward the bandages covering his wounds. Realization flickered across his face. She had helped him. The silence deepened. Finally his rough voice emerged.
Low.
Broken, yet powerful enough to send chills through her entire body. You should have left me to die. And somehow, the way he said it sounded less like a warning, and more like a tragedy. The storm did not leave. For 3 more nights, rain hammered against the battlefield as if the heavens themselves were trying to erase every trace of the war. Inside the carcass of the fallen war beast, darkness became a living thing. It wrapped around bone, around flesh, around secrets, and around the 2 strangers trapped together beneath death. Lyra barely slept after the man awakened. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt those golden eyes watching her through the shadows. Not constantly, not threateningly, but always aware, always alert, like a wolf pretending to rest while listening to every sound in the forest. The stranger remained weak. His injuries were severe, far worse than she had initially realized. The wound beneath his ribs had become infected. His arm refused to move properly. Fever came and went like waves crashing against a shoreline. Yet even wounded, he radiated an authority that unsettled her. No ordinary soldier carried himself like that. No ordinary man spoke with that kind of control. Even lying half-dead beneath a mountain of flesh, he somehow felt larger than the space around him. More dangerous. More powerful. The first day after his awakening passed mostly in silence. Lyra cleaned his wounds.
He watched.
Lyra gathered rainwater.
He watched.
Lyra checked his fever. He watched. Finally, unable to endure the tension any longer, she snapped. Why do you keep staring at me? The question echoed softly through the darkness. For a moment he said nothing. Then his deep voice emerged. Because you're still here. Lyra frowned. What does that mean? His gaze never left her face. It means most people would have abandoned me. Something unexpectedly sad flashed through his eyes. Gone so quickly she almost imagined it. The silence returned. But something had changed. The invisible wall between them had cracked. Only slightly, but enough. Outside, thunder rolled across the battlefield. Inside, the stranger shifted painfully against broken armor. A grimace crossed his face. Lyra immediately noticed. Without thinking, she moved closer. The moment her hand touched his shoulder, everything stopped.
The air.
The silence. Even her breathing. A strange warmth spread through her palm.
Soft.
Gentle. Almost alive. The tension in his body eased instantly. His pained expression softened. His clenched jaw relaxed. Both of them froze. Neither understood what had happened. The stranger stared at her hand, then at her face, then back again. Confusion flickered across his features. For the first time since awakening, genuine uncertainty appeared in those terrifying golden eyes. Lyra quickly pulled away. The warmth vanished immediately. The pain returned. The stranger's expression darkened. Not from anger. From realization. Something unusual was happening. Something neither could explain. That night his fever worsened. Dreams consumed him. Violent dreams. Nightmares. Lyra woke repeatedly to the sound of him struggling against invisible enemies. His breathing became ragged.
His muscles tightened.
Sweat covered his skin. Then came the words. Broken fragments spoken through sleep. Protect them. A pause. No. Another pause. A sound filled with unbearable grief. I couldn't save her. Lyra listened quietly. The words carried enough pain to silence her fear. Whoever this man was, something had shattered him long ago. The next morning arrived beneath gray skies. Rainwater dripped steadily from the beast's ribs. The stranger seemed calmer, less guarded. Exhaustion had worn down some of his defenses. Eventually, he spoke first. You've been running. Lyra looked up. His gaze remained fixed on her. You move like prey. The observation should have offended her. Instead, it made her stomach tighten. Because he was right. Every movement she made came from fear. Every breath. Every decision. Every instinct.
Run. Hide.
Survive. Nothing else. The stranger continued. Who are you hiding from? Lyra hesitated. The memories hurt too much. But somehow the darkness around them felt safer than the world outside. My family was murdered. The words emerged quietly. Almost too quietly. Yet the effect was immediate. The stranger became still. Completely still. As punishment?
No.
She swallowed. They wanted something. What? Her voice trembled. Our bloodline. Silence followed.
Long.
Heavy. The stranger looked away first. As though he understood more than he was willing to reveal. Hours passed. Their conversations became longer. Not friendly. Not yet. But real. Fragments of truth exchanged between two wounded souls. The stranger spoke of war. Of leadership. Of sacrifice. Of betrayal. Never specifics. Never names. Only scars hidden beneath carefully chosen words. And Lyra noticed something strange. Whenever he spoke about loss, the coldness vanished from his voice. For brief moments, she glimpsed the man buried beneath the monster. A lonely man. A grieving man. A man carrying too much weight for too many years. Meanwhile, far beyond the battlefield, the kingdom was beginning to fracture. Nobles fought for influence. Generals questioned loyalties. Whispers spread across every city. The Alpha King was dead. The throne stood empty. And ambitious people were already circling like vultures. Among them stood Lady Seraphine Voss. Beautiful. Intelligent. Dangerous. She listened carefully as reports arrived from every corner of the kingdom. Missing soldiers. Broken battle formations. Unconfirmed survivors. One report in particular caught her attention. Tracks discovered near the battlefield. Signs that someone had escaped. Her eyes narrowed. A feeling she could not explain settled in her chest. Something was wrong. Somewhere, a secret remained alive. And Seraphine hated secrets she did not control. Back inside the war beast, another storm arrived. The wind screamed through broken ribs. Darkness swallowed everything. Lyra sat near the stranger while rain drummed overhead. His eyes remained closed. For the first time since meeting him, he appeared peaceful. Then suddenly,
A growl. Low. Deep.
ancient. Lyra jerked upright. The sound hadn't come from outside. It had come from him. His body remained motionless. Yet something else stirred beneath the surface. Something powerful. Something primal. For a split second she could almost feel it. A wolf. Not physically. Spiritually. A presence hidden beneath flesh. Wounded. Restless. Lonely. And strangely drawn toward her. Without thinking, she reached forward. Her fingers brushed his hand. Instantly, the invisible wolf calmed. The growl disappeared. The atmosphere softened. The stranger's breathing steadied. Then his eyes opened. Golden. Luminous. Locked directly onto hers. This time, neither looked away. The connection lingered. Dangerous. Intimate. Forbidden. The stranger stared at her as though seeing her for the first time. as though finally understanding why his pain vanished whenever she touched him. Outside, distant voices suddenly echoed across the battlefield. Soldiers. Searching. Closer than before. Both of them heard it. Both understood the danger immediately. The stranger slowly forced himself upright despite obvious pain. Lyra moved to stop him. "You can't." "I can. You'll die." A faint smile touched his lips. Not warm, not pleasant. The smile of someone intimately familiar with death. "It hasn't managed to kill me yet." The approaching voices grew louder. Lantern light flickered beyond the ribs. The search party had found their trail. For several tense moments, neither spoke. Then the stranger looked directly into her eyes. The decision had clearly been made. No more lies. No more hiding. His voice emerged low and steady. "The kingdom believes its king is dead." Lyra frowned. "What does that have to do with us?" The stranger held her gaze. Everything changed in the next sentence. Because when he finally spoke, the entire world seemed to stop breathing. "I am King Kael Draven." Silence exploded inside her mind. The Alpha King. The Butcher of Black Hollow. The Wolf King. The most feared ruler on the continent. The monster children feared. The conqueror armies obeyed. The king she had spent days nursing back to life. The king currently staring directly at her. And outside the beast's corpse, the soldiers were getting closer, much closer. As realization flooded through Lyra's body, another voice echoed through the darkness beyond the ribs. A soldier's shout. "Someone's inside." The lantern light suddenly brightened, and King Kael slowly reached for the sword lying beside him, as hundreds of footsteps began rushing toward the carcass. The first soldier died before he ever saw the king. His scream lasted less than a second. A flash of steel cut through the darkness beyond the ribs of the war beast. Then silence returned.
Cold. Sudden. Terrifying.
Lyra stood frozen inside the carcass as shadows moved outside. More soldiers rushed forward. More shouting erupted. Metal clashed. The sound echoed through bone and flesh like thunder trapped inside a tomb. King Kael was barely standing. Blood still soaked his bandages. His body remained weakened from days beneath the beast. Yet the moment his hand closed around the sword, something transformed. The wounded stranger disappeared. The king emerged. The atmosphere itself seemed to bend around him. Predatory. Merciless. Ancient. His golden eyes glowed beneath the darkness. Not with fear. With authority. With absolute certainty. For the first time, Lyra understood why entire kingdoms feared this man. Even injured, he felt unstoppable. Outside, another soldier appeared between the ribs. His face lit with triumph. "The king." The sentence never finished. Kael moved.
Fast.
Far too fast for a wounded man. Steel flashed. The soldier collapsed. Silence followed. Then dozens of footsteps suddenly retreated. Panic spread among the search party, because rumors traveled faster than arrows. And the greatest rumor in the kingdom was now standing alive inside a battlefield grave. The Alpha King had returned. Hours later, dawn painted the horizon gray. The search party had fled. The battlefield once again belonged to the dead. Kael stood overlooking the valley. His posture remained rigid despite exhaustion. Lyra watched him from a distance. Everything felt different now. Before, he had been a stranger. A wounded man. A mystery. Now she knew the truth. This was the king whose name filled songs and nightmares. The ruler responsible for wars, victories, executions. Entire generations feared him. And somehow fate had trapped her beside him. Neither spoke for a long time. The silence stretched between them. Not comfortable. Not hostile. Uncertain. Finally, Kael broke it. "You should leave." The words startled her. "What?" His gaze remained fixed on the distant horizon. "The moment we leave this battlefield, everyone around me becomes a target."
His voice was calm.
Emotionless.
Practiced.
The voice of a man accustomed to sacrifice. A king creates enemies. Lyra stared at him. "So that's your solution?" "It is the safest one." Something bitter rose inside her chest. After everything they had survived together, She hated how easily he said it. As though abandoning people came naturally. As though connections meant nothing. You don't get to decide that for me. For the first time, surprise flickered across his face. Brief. Almost invisible. Then it vanished. Yet something else appeared. Respect. Tiny. Fragile. But real. Hours later they left the battlefield. The journey north began beneath dark clouds and cold winds. The kingdom they traveled through no longer resembled the one Kael had left. Chaos had spread everywhere. Villages whispered about rebellion. Merchants spoke of noble houses gathering armies. Fear lingered in every tavern and marketplace. The king's absence had created a wound, and ambitious people were already trying to tear it wider. The farther they traveled, the more dangerous the roads became. Several times Kael noticed spies observing them. Several times he changed their route without explanation. Several times Lyra realized that, even wounded, he remained constantly aware of every threat. The realization frightened her, but it fascinated her too, because beneath the monster's reputation existed something unexpected. Responsibility. Everything he did carried purpose. Every decision, every risk, every sacrifice. The king never stopped thinking about his people. Even when nobody was watching. Even when nobody would know. One night they camped beneath towering pine trees. A fire crackled softly between them. The forest stood silent beyond the flames. Kael sat sharpening his sword. Lyra watched the sparks dance upward. For a while neither spoke. Then she noticed him staring into the fire. Not seeing the flames. Seeing memories.
Pain. Ghosts.
The expression lingered only a moment. Yet she caught it. A crack in the armor. What happened to her? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Kael looked up. His face hardened immediately. Dangerously.
Who?
The woman from your nightmares. Silence. The forest seemed to stop breathing. Lyra immediately regretted asking. But then something unexpected happened. Kael answered. She died. 3 words. Nothing more. Yet the grief behind them felt enormous. Ancient. Unhealed. His gaze returned to the flames. My enemies couldn't reach me. His voice grew quieter. So they reached her. Lyra felt her chest tighten. For the first time she understood. The loneliness. The walls. The coldness. Everything led back to that loss. A king powerful enough to conquer nations. Yet powerless to save the person he loved. The realization changed something inside her. Not attraction. Not yet. Something deeper. Understanding. And understanding was far more dangerous. Because understanding created sympathy. Sympathy created attachment. And attachment always led to pain. Days later, the capital finally appeared. Black towers pierced the horizon. Massive walls surrounded the city, like stone jaws. Thousands of banners fluttered above rooftops. The northern moon throne. Heart of the kingdom. Seat of power. Home of betrayal. The moment Kael entered the city, shock exploded through the population. People stopped walking. Merchants dropped goods. Guards stared in disbelief. Words spread like wildfire. The king was alive. The dead king had returned. And beside him walked an unknown Omega. Inside the royal palace, panic erupted. Servants rushed through corridors. Nobles whispered frantically. Political alliances shifted within hours. Because Kael's survival destroyed countless plans. Among those watching from above stood Lady Seraphine Voss. Moonlight spilled through stained glass windows behind her. Her silver gown shimmered like ice. Beautiful. Elegant.
Deadly.
From a balcony overlooking the courtyard, she watched Kael dismount. Her expression remained calm. Perfectly composed. Only her eyes betrayed emotion. Calculation. Possession. Jealousy. Then she saw Lyra. And everything changed. The Omega stood near Kael, while servants gathered around them. Nothing improper. Nothing intimate. Yet Seraphine noticed something nobody else did. The king looked toward Lyra first. Not his generals. Not his advisors. Not his court. Her. The observation struck like a blade. Because Kael never looked at anyone that way. Never. A cold smile slowly formed on Seraphine's lips. Dangerous.
Predatory.
The kind of smile that appeared moments before destruction. Far below, Lyra suddenly felt a strange chill crawl across her skin, as though unseen eyes had settled upon her. Watching, measuring, hunting. She looked upward instinctively, and found a woman standing on the balcony, beautiful as moonlight, cold as winter. Their eyes met, only for a second, yet something passed between them. Recognition. Not of faces. Of threat. Lyra didn't understand why, but every instinct inside her whispered the same warning. Danger. Meanwhile, beside her, Kael's attention remained elsewhere. His gaze had settled upon the throne room doors. The very doors behind which years of betrayal waited. The very doors hiding enemies he once trusted. The very doors that would soon begin tearing apart everything he and Lyra had built together. And neither of them knew that somewhere behind those walls, lies were already being prepared. Carefully crafted, patiently sharpened, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Because Lady Seraphine had just found the weakness in the Alpha King's armor, and she intended to destroy it, no matter how much blood had to be spilled. The palace was beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful. Elegant.
Perfect.
Dangerous. Every corridor glittered with gold and crystal. Every noble wore smiles polished by years of deception. Every conversation carried hidden meanings beneath carefully chosen words. And Lyra hated all of it. Weeks had passed since their arrival at the capital. Weeks during which she learned that surviving a battlefield had been easier than surviving the royal court. On the battlefield, enemies carried swords. Inside the palace, enemies carried smiles. Every day whispers followed her. The runaway Omega. The king's strange companion. The nobody who somehow stood beside the most powerful alpha in the kingdom. Women laughed behind jeweled fans. Men questioned her intentions. Servants spread rumors through hidden hallways. Nobody attacked openly.
Not yet.
Instead, they poisoned reputations.
Slowly.
Patiently. Cruelly. And standing at the center of that invisible web was Lady Seraphine Voss. The perfect predator. The perfect manipulator. The perfect liar. She never insulted Lyra directly. Never. That would have been too obvious. Instead, she planted doubts. Tiny seeds. Tiny suspicions. Tiny fears. And then she watched them grow. One evening, Lyra found herself alone inside the royal library. Rain tapped softly against stained glass windows. Thousands of ancient books filled towering shelves. The scent of parchment and candle wax lingered in the air. For the first time all day, she could breathe. The court felt far away. The whispers felt distant. The loneliness felt manageable. Then a voice broke the silence. Still searching for answers? Lyra turned. Seraphine stood near the entrance. Elegant as always. Graceful as always. Dangerous as always. Lyra immediately felt tension crawl through her body. I wasn't aware I needed permission to read. Seraphine smiled. A beautiful smile. A false one. Of course not. She walked slowly between the shelves. Every movement controlled. Every gesture deliberate. I simply wondered why you've become so interested in records concerning your family. The question hit harder than expected. Lyra's pulse quickened. Because she had been searching. Searching obsessively. Searching for the truth. Searching for the people responsible for the massacre that destroyed her life. And somehow, Seraphine knew. The realization unsettled her. What do you know about them? For the first time, genuine emotion flickered across Seraphine's eyes. Not sympathy. Not kindness. Satisfaction. The reaction lasted only a second. Then it vanished. A great deal. The answer landed like thunder. Lyra stared. Seraphine reached into her sleeve. Slowly. Deliberately. Then she produced a folded document. Ancient.
Worn.
Official. Royal. The seal on the parchment had been partially broken, but still recognizable. Lyra felt her stomach twist. The royal seal. Seraphine extended the document. Read it. The room suddenly felt colder. Lyra accepted the parchment, unfolded it carefully, and began reading. At first, the words made little sense. Military movements. Orders. Names. locations. Then her eyes reached the bottom, and her entire world stopped. A signature. One name. One impossible name. Kael Draven. The order authorized operations in the region where her family had been killed. The exact region. The exact period. The exact time. Lyra's hands began shaking. No. The whisper barely escaped her lips. No. Seraphine watched quietly, patiently, like a spider observing trapped prey. Perhaps he didn't tell you everything. The words slid into Lyra's mind like poison.
Slow.
Silent.
Deadly. No.
Lyra stepped backward.
He wouldn't.
Wouldn't what?
Lie?
Hide something? Protect himself? The uncertainty hurt more than certainty ever could. Because for weeks she had trusted him. For weeks she had believed she understood him. But now, doubt had arrived.
And doubt was a terrible thing.
Especially when love had already begun growing beneath it. That night Kael found her standing alone on a balcony, overlooking the city. Moonlight covered the capital in silver. Rain clouds drifted across the sky. The world felt quiet. Too quiet. He immediately noticed something was wrong. His instincts never failed where Lyra was concerned. What happened? She didn't answer. The silence alone was enough to concern him. Kael stepped closer. I asked a question. Still silence. Then finally she turned, and the pain in her eyes struck harder than any blade. The sight instantly unsettled him, because he knew that look. Betrayal. Suspicion. Distance. Someone had poisoned something. Somehow. What did you find? The question emerged carefully. Lyra stared at him, searching his face, searching his eyes, searching for truth. Did you know my family would die? The world froze. Kael blinked once. Then again. Shock flashed across his face.
Raw.
Unfiltered. Dangerous. What? The single word carried genuine disbelief. But doubt had already entered Lyra's heart. And doubt changes everything. She produced the document, held it toward him. The royal seal glimmered beneath moonlight. Kael took it. Read it. His expression darkened instantly. Not guilt.
Rage.
Pure rage. Yet Lyra couldn't see the difference. Because pain was blinding her. This is forged. His voice turned cold.
Deadly.
The signature is false. How convenient. The response escaped before she could stop it. The moment it did, regret followed. Kael became very still. Dangerously still. The kind of stillness that appeared before storms. For several seconds, neither spoke. The distance between them felt enormous. Much larger than a balcony. Much larger than a palace. Much larger than a kingdom. Finally, Kael lowered the document. His voice emerged quieter. And somehow that hurt more. You think I would do that? Lyra didn't answer. Because she didn't know. And that uncertainty became answer enough. Something broke inside his eyes. Not visibly. Not dramatically.
Subtly.
A crack. A wound. A disappointment. The expression lasted only a moment before years of emotional armor sealed it away. Without another word, Kael turned and walked away. The sound of his footsteps disappeared into darkness. And Lyra immediately hated herself. But not enough to silence the questions. Meanwhile, hidden behind layers of deception, Seraphine's plans accelerated. More forged documents appeared. More false witnesses emerged. More lies spread through the capital. Each lie strengthened suspicion. Each suspicion weakened trust. Each fracture widened. Until eventually the kingdom itself began feeling the effects. Riots erupted in poorer districts. Noble houses challenged royal authority. Assassination attempts increased. Enemies sensed weakness. And weakness attracted predators. Kael grew colder. The pressure surrounding the throne became unbearable. Every day demanded impossible decisions. Every night brought new threats. And throughout it all, Lyra drifted farther away. The woman who once soothed his nightmares now avoided his gaze. The woman who once trusted him now questioned everything. The loss cut deeper than he admitted. Far deeper. Because somewhere during their journey, she had become important. Essential. Dangerously necessary. And now she was slipping away. Exactly as Seraphine intended. The final blow arrived during a royal gathering. Hundreds of nobles filled the grand throne hall. Golden chandeliers illuminated polished marble floors. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Nobody knew why they had been summoned. Only Seraphine knew, because she had orchestrated every second. She stepped forward before the court, elegant, confident, victorious. Then she unveiled the evidence. Witnesses, documents, accusations, fabricated proof connecting Lyra to conspirators seeking to destabilize the kingdom. Gasps filled the hall. Whispers erupted instantly. The accusations spread like wildfire. Lyra stood frozen,
Stunned.
horrified. Everything happened too quickly, too perfectly. She finally understood. The trap, the manipulation, the lies. But realization came too late. The court had already chosen its narrative, and truth rarely mattered once fear took control. All eyes turned toward the throne, toward Kael,
Toward the king.
waiting, expecting, hoping. Lyra looked at him,
Desperately.
silently.
Please. Defend me.
Tell them the truth. Tell them I'm not alone. Tell them you know me. Tell them you trust me. For one terrible moment, their eyes met across the hall. The entire kingdom seemed to hold its breath. Kael knew the accusations were false. He knew, but he also saw the fragile state of the kingdom, the riots, the unrest, the political chaos. One wrong move could ignite civil war. Duty and love collided inside him. And duty won, not because he wanted it to, because kings rarely had the luxury of choosing happiness. The silence lasted too long, far too long. And in that silence, Lyra received her answer. The pain was immediate, absolute, devastating. When the royal decree was finally read aloud, she barely heard the words. Exile, banishment, immediate removal from the kingdom. The sentence echoed through the throne room. And somewhere in the crowd, hidden behind a mask of concern, Seraphine smiled. Victory had arrived. As guards approached, Lyra looked toward Kael one final time. But the king remained seated upon the throne, motionless, silent, untouchable. The sight shattered something inside her. Before sunrise, she would be gone. And neither of them yet understood that losing each other was about to destroy them both. The gates of the capital closed behind her before dawn. The sound echoed across the empty road like the final note of a funeral bell. Heavy,
Permanent.
cruel. Lyra did not look back. Not because she was strong, because she knew if she looked back even once, she might break. The cold morning wind swept across the plains as she walked away from the kingdom she had nearly begun calling home. Away from the palace. Away from the throne. Away from the man who had become the center of her thoughts. The man who had remained silent when she needed him most. The memory burned deeper than any wound. Every step hurt, not physically, emotionally, because she could still see him sitting upon the throne, still hear the silence, still feel the moment hope died. The road stretched endlessly beneath gray skies. For days she wandered through forests and mountains, alone, once again, just as she had been before fate led her into the carcass of a dead war beast. Yet something had changed. The frightened girl who once survived by hiding no longer existed. Pain had transformed her. Betrayal had sharpened her. Loss had hardened her. Every tear she shed became fuel. Every memory became armor. And every heartbeat carried a growing promise. Never again would she allow others to decide her worth. Never again would she survive merely by running. The world had taken enough from her. Now she would take something back. Far beyond the northern borders stood the Forgotten Wilds. A land abandoned by noble houses. A place where exiles, outcasts, and displaced wolf packs gathered. Most considered it cursed. Lyra walked directly into it. Weeks passed. Then months. Winter arrived. Snow buried the mountains. Ice covered rivers. The wilderness became a test designed to destroy the weak. Yet Lyra survived. She learned, adapted, evolved. For the first time in her life, nobody treated her as fragile. Nobody treated her as property. Nobody treated her as less. The Forgotten Packs saw something different. They saw strength. Not the strength of claws or swords. The strength of heart. The strength that inspires loyalty. The strength that makes others believe tomorrow can still exist. And slowly, impossibly, people began following her. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, King Kael Draven was falling apart. Not publicly. Never publicly. Kings were not allowed such luxuries. The kingdom still saw the same cold ruler, the same fearsome alpha, the same undefeated king. But behind closed doors, the truth was very different. His chambers remained dark most nights. Sleep rarely came, and when it did, nightmares followed. Nightmares of battle. Nightmares of betrayal. Nightmares of a girl walking away while he remained trapped upon a throne he suddenly hated. The silence inside the palace felt unbearable now, because Lyra had changed it. Before her arrival, loneliness had become normal. After her departure, loneliness became torture. One night, months after the exile, Kael sat alone inside the war chamber. A single candle flickered beside stacks of reports. Most remained unread. His attention lingered elsewhere, on a familiar scarf folded carefully upon the table. Lyra's scarf. She had forgotten it, or perhaps left it behind intentionally. He no longer knew. The uncertainty haunted him. A knock interrupted the silence. The king's spymaster entered immediately. His expression was grim, urgent, dangerous. Kael looked up. What is it? The spymaster placed several documents upon the table. Proof. Kael's eyes narrowed. The man continued. We found the source of the forged evidence. The room suddenly became very still. Kael reached for the papers.
Read.
And read again. Every page tightened the knot inside his chest. Witnesses bribed. Records altered. Royal seals duplicated. False testimonies manufactured. Every accusation against Lyra had originated from the same source. One name appeared repeatedly. Lady Seraphine Voss. For several seconds, absolute silence filled the room. Then something terrifying happened. Kael smiled. Not with amusement. Not with satisfaction. With fury.
Pure.
Controlled. Lethal fury. The kind that preceded executions. The kind that ended dynasties. The candlelight reflected in his golden eyes. For the first time in years, his wolf stirred violently beneath the surface. Not because of politics. Not because of war. Because of guilt. Because the woman who had trusted him had suffered because of his weakness. Because he had chosen caution when he should have chosen her. The realization struck harder than any battlefield wound. He had failed. Not as a king. As a man. As the days passed, Kael unleashed his wrath. Corrupt officials vanished. Traitors were exposed. Secret alliances crumbled. The royal court transformed into a battlefield. Every thread eventually led back to Seraphine. Yet the deeper Kael dug, the more horrifying the truth became. The conspiracy extended far beyond simple jealousy. It connected directly to the attack that killed Lyra's family years ago. The revelation shook him, because it meant Lyra had been telling the truth all along. The same network of nobles responsible for destroying her childhood had spent years manipulating the kingdom from within. And Seraphine stood among them. Meanwhile, far away in the Forgotten Wilds, Lyra discovered truths of her own. Deep within ancient ruins hidden beneath snow-covered mountains, she uncovered records older than the kingdom itself. Records concerning her bloodline. Records concerning Omega gifts. Records concerning destiny. And among those forgotten writings, one story appeared again and again. The tale of the heart-bonded beast. According to legend, royal war beasts possessed intelligence far beyond ordinary creatures. They chose their kings,
Protected them.
loved them, and in rare moments of death, they could shape fate itself. Lyra's hands trembled as she continued reading, because one passage described a dying beast using its final strength to bind two souls together. Not lovers, not mates. Two people destined to heal one another. Her breathing slowed. Memories flooded back. The battlefield. The carcass. The strange warmth whenever she touched Kael. The impossible connection neither understood. Suddenly, everything made sense. The beast had known. Somehow, impossibly, it had known. Tears filled her eyes. Not from sadness. From understanding. Because the creature everyone called a monster had sacrificed itself protecting the king from betrayal. And with its dying breath, it had given them both a second chance. That revelation changed everything. Her anger remained. Her pain remained. But hatred began disappearing. Because hatred required certainty. And now she finally understood how much they had both been manipulated. Winter eventually surrendered to spring. Snow melted. Rivers awakened. New life emerged across the wilderness. And with it came rumors. Rumors spreading through every tavern, village, and trading road. The exiled Omega lives. The runaway has returned. The forgotten packs follow her. The woman banished by the king commands an army. At first the stories sounded absurd. Then they became impossible to ignore. Pack leaders pledged loyalty. Border settlements welcomed her. Warriors gathered beneath her banner. Not because she demanded obedience, because she inspired belief. The frightened girl who once hid inside a carcass no longer existed. In her place stood something far greater. A leader, a symbol, a future queen. One evening, as the sun bled gold across the horizon, Lyra stood atop a cliff overlooking thousands of campfires below. Her people, her allies, her army. The wind lifted her dark hair. The setting sun illuminated her face. Stronger now, wiser now, unrecognizable from the terrified Omega who once hid from the world. A messenger approached, breathless, urgent. Scouts have returned. Lyra turned. And the messenger swallowed. Excitement flashed across his face. The capital is collapsing. Silence followed. Then another sentence. One capable of changing everything. And the king is hunting the truth. Lyra looked toward the distant south. Toward the kingdom. Toward the throne. Toward Kael. The emotions inside her became impossible to untangle.
Love.
Anger.
Grief. Hope. Fear.
They all existed together. But one truth rose above them all. The story was not over. Not yet. Far below, thousands of warriors waited. Above them, moonlight slowly emerged across the darkening sky. Lyra closed her eyes, then made her decision. When she opened them again, determination blazed there. The frightened Omega was gone. The queen had been born. And as banners began rising across the camp, a single command echoed through the wilderness. A command that would soon shake the entire kingdom.
March.
Because the woman they had exiled was coming home. And this time, she was not coming alone. The contact was small, gentle, yet powerful enough to stop a monster. Immediately, the fury eased. The storm inside him quieted. Just enough. Just enough to remember who he wanted to become. Not a weapon. Not a beast.
A man.
A king. A future worthy of love. Seraphine saw the change. And for the first time, fear entered her eyes. Because she finally understood. The thing she could never defeat. The thing she never truly understood. It wasn't power. It wasn't armies. It wasn't royalty. It was healing. Lyra had healed the part of Kael that Seraphine spent years trying to control. And that made her invincible. The final battle ended quickly after that. The truth destroyed Seraphine's remaining support. Nobles abandoned her. Soldiers lowered weapons. Allies became strangers. And eventually, standing alone amid the ruins of her ambitions, Seraphine faced the consequence of every choice she had made. No throne. No king. No power. Only emptiness. Exactly what she had created for others. As she was taken away, her gaze remained fixed on Kael and Lyra. Not with hatred. With disbelief. As though she still couldn't understand why love had succeeded where manipulation failed. When the battlefield finally fell silent, rain began to fall.
Soft.
Gentle. Almost cleansing. The kingdom had survived. But Kael barely noticed. Because Lyra stood before him. Close enough to touch. Close enough to lose again. For several moments, neither spoke. The silence carried the weight of everything between them. Every misunderstanding, every wound, every sacrifice, every longing. Finally, Kael lowered himself to one knee. The sight shocked everyone. Generals, nobles, warriors. An alpha king kneeling. Not from weakness. From honesty. His voice emerged rough, unsteady, human. I failed you. Rain slid across his face. I told myself it was duty.
His jaw tightened.
But the truth is I was afraid. Lyra's breath caught. Kael continued. I was afraid of losing the kingdom.
A pause.
Then the real confession. And I was too blind to realize I was already losing the only thing that mattered. Silence.
Raw.
Painful. Beautiful. The king looked up. No crown. No throne. No armor. Just a broken man asking for one final chance. I don't deserve forgiveness. The words trembled. But if there is any part of your heart that still remembers us. His voice almost broke. Please let me spend the rest of my life earning it. Tears filled Lyra's eyes. Not because the pain vanished. Because it didn't. Some wounds never fully disappear. But healing was never about forgetting. It was about choosing what came next. Slowly, she stepped forward. Then placed her hand against his cheek. The same way she once touched a wounded stranger hidden beneath a dead beast. The same way she once calmed a monster. The same way she once saved a king. I never stopped remembering. Kael closed his eyes. And for the first time in years, peace found him. Months later, the kingdom celebrated beneath silver moonlight. The war was over. The corruption was gone. The future had begun. At the center of the capital stood a newly raised monument. Not dedicated to a king. Not dedicated to a queen. Dedicated to a fallen war beast. The guardian who had given everything. The creature whose final sacrifice changed destiny itself. Thousands gathered around it, including King Kael, including Queen Lyra, because she was queen now. Not because of marriage. Not because of destiny. Because she had earned it. Through suffering. Through courage. Through transformation. As moonlight bathed the monument, an elderly seer stepped forward carrying an ancient scroll. The crowd fell silent. The prophecy had finally been translated. For years scholars believed it described fate. They had been wrong. The old woman read aloud. Her voice carried across the square. When the dying guardian gives its final breath, two broken hearts shall meet where death becomes shelter. The crowd listened quietly. The seer smiled, then revealed the final line. The bond shall not be forged by destiny. A pause. The bond shall be forged by love freely chosen. Silence settled over the gathering. Then, understanding. The war beast had not forced their future. It had only given them a chance. Everything afterward had been their choice. Their forgiveness. Their sacrifice. Their love. Above the kingdom, the moon shone brighter. And somewhere beyond the veil of legends, beyond memory and time, perhaps a loyal guardian still watched. Satisfied. Because the king it loved had finally found peace. And the Omega girl who once hid among death had become the heart of an entire kingdom. The end of their story had not been written by fate. It had been written by two wounded souls who chose each other anyway. And that choice changed everything. War arrived before sunrise. It swept across the kingdom like a storm born from years of lies. Messengers rode through the night. Castle bells rang without rest. Armies marched beneath banners stained by old loyalties and new betrayals. The Northern Moon Kingdom stood on the edge of collapse. And at the center of it all stood Lady Seraphine Voss. The woman who had spent years weaving webs inside shadows. The woman who believed she could control kings. The woman who had mistaken obsession for love. From the highest balcony of the royal palace, she watched smoke rise beyond the capital walls. Her silver gown fluttered in the wind. Below, panic spread through the city. Above, dark clouds gathered. A fitting sky for the end of a kingdom. Yet Seraphine felt no fear. Only certainty. Because desperate people often made desperate choices. And she had prepared for this moment for years. If she could not possess the throne through influence, she would take it through chaos. Far below, the great gates of the capital opened. King Kael Draven rode at the head of his army. Black armor covered his body. Moonsteel reflected flashes of lightning overhead. The people lining the streets stared at him with a mixture of hope and fear. Their king looked exactly as he always had. Powerful, unbreakable, terrifying. But beneath the armor, something had changed. For the first time in years, vengeance was no longer the thing driving him. Hope was. A dangerous hope. A fragile hope. A hope carrying the name Lyra. Because somewhere beyond the horizon, she was coming. And Kael intended to be worthy of her when she arrived. The battlefield formed outside the capital before noon. Thousands of warriors stood beneath competing banners. The earth trembled beneath marching feet. Weapons glimmered beneath dark skies. The kingdom had become a divided heart. One half loyal to the throne, one half manipulated by lies. And somewhere between them stood destiny itself. Then the horn sounded.
Long, deep,
ancient. Every soldier turned toward the northern hills. A new army had arrived. An army carrying unfamiliar banners. An army larger than anyone expected. An army led by a woman wearing silver and midnight armor. Lyra. A gasp moved through both forces like a living thing. The runaway Omega. The exiled girl. The forgotten survivor.
Gone.
In her place stood someone entirely different. Confidence radiated from her posture. Strength from her gaze. Authority from every movement. She looked like she belonged beside a throne, not beneath one. Kael saw her immediately. The world seemed to narrow. The armies vanished. The battlefield disappeared. Everything faded except her. Months of separation. Months of regret. Months of longing. All collapsed into a single moment. And for the first time since her exile, their eyes met again. The impact was devastating, because neither of them were the same people anymore. Lyra saw it first. The king standing before her looked older somehow. Not physically. Emotionally. His guilt had left scars. His loneliness had left scars. Losing her had left scars. And for the first time, she realized how much pain he had carried alone.
Kael saw it too.
The frightened Omega he once protected no longer existed. She had become something extraordinary, something powerful, something capable of standing beside him as an equal. The realization filled him with pride and heartbreak, because he should have helped her become this. Instead, he had been the reason she suffered. Before either could move, another voice shattered the moment. Seraphine. Her laughter echoed across the battlefield.
Sharp, cold, mad.
The sound carried through the wind, through the armies, through the kingdom itself. Look at you both. Her smile widened. You destroyed yourselves exactly as I planned. Lightning illuminated the battlefield. For the first time, masks fell away. No more manipulation. No more hidden agendas. Only truth remained. And Seraphine finally revealed everything. The forged documents. The false witnesses. The murders. The conspiracies. Even the attack that killed Lyra's family. Years of secrets poured into the open. The assembled nobles watched in horror. The soldiers listened in disbelief. The kingdom learned how deeply corruption had poisoned its heart. Yet the most painful revelation came last. Seraphine looked directly at Kael and smiled. I knew your first mate would die. Silence. Absolute silence. Then she continued. I simply made sure it happened. The world stopped. Something ancient and terrifying awakened inside Kael. Every wound, every nightmare, every year of grief, every ounce of guilt, all exploded at once. The battlefield trembled beneath the force of his rage. His wolf surged forward, violent, savage, hungry for blood. The old Kael would have surrendered to it. The old Kael would have torn the world apart. But then, a hand touched his. Lyra.